Folks, let's give a warm welcome to the President and CEO of PDS, Asif Naseem.
Well, how about John Miller, guys, and Tom Koulopoulos? Right. It's a tough act to follow, but I'm going to try anyways. Thank you very much, John. In the next hour or so, maybe hour and 10 minutes or so, what we'll do is we'll dive a little bit deeper into the role of technology, into what we do in our businesses. And as John mentioned, we have a powerful panel that I will shortly introduce. But what I want to do is, in the first 15, 20 minutes or so, set the context for that. Now, in order for us to know where we're going in our business, I think it is instructive to look at where we have been. So if we take a macro look at our US economy, several sectors have, over the years, contributed to our GDP. Manufacturing, a number of years ago, 4 or 5 decades ago, was the largest contributor to our economy. And our GDP output was close to 25, 28% of our total GDP. And that has, it's no surprise, we all know, has steadily declined to where it is about in the mid-teens today. Now, meanwhile, services, specifically financial services and business services, has actually been on a steady rise. Now, why is that? If you look at a deeper look, if you take a deeper look, central banks for many decades have been pumping a lot of money into our system. Sectors like manufacturing can only absorb so much money because they are very, very capital intensive. So a lot of that money has been ending up in the financial services and in the business services sector. Hence the rise to those two sectors, giving rise to this transition from industrial economy to services economy. Now, we've all known and heard about these trends, manufacturing going down, service sector going up. But what is not very well known is that manufacturing still contributes significant amount to our GDP, and it has been rising over the years. So if you take a look at this, last few decades, in the 1980s, our total economy was close to $6 to $7 trillion, and it has grown threefold to $18 trillion today. But if you look at the manufacturing actual value add over the same period, it has significantly increased, and it's on a significant incline trend. We used to buy a lot from Japan early on, a couple of decades ago. And then we caught eye on China. We stopped buying from Japan, and Japan caught up with us. Even though they caught up with us, their economy has been, it faltered, and it is stagnant for several decades. And all the indications are it will continue to do that. Meanwhile, we've seen the rise of China. Significant rise in China. And part of the reason has been that we outsource a lot to China, and we buy a lot from them. And they've caught up with us in the last few years or so. And the question is, will that trend continue? And will they surpass us? Or will the same thing happen to them as happened to Japan? We'll have to see. But what has happened is, in our manufacturing economy, there are two fundamental reasons why we continue to improve in terms of the actual value add of manufacturing. One is, as I mentioned, we become good at outsourcing, and we can outsource the lower value products to other emerging economies and focus on at the higher end of the value chain and continue to invest in high value, high product, products and goods. But I think what's even more important in that trend is that technology has taught us different ways of thinking, different ways of organizing work that has revolutionized the manufacturing contribution to GDP. And as a result, not just in manufacturing, in all of other sectors, we're doing more with less. And we're becoming more and more productive. We're doing more with less thanks to technology. That technology has allowed us to be as productive as we are. Now, if you look at where we are today, this is the most recent data. We are 80% predominantly a services economy. And this services economy actually includes financial services, business services, engineering, science, telecommunications, computers, communications, and professional services and business services. That is 80% of our economy. And it is the largest consumer of technology and becoming more and more so. As a matter of fact, 85% of the technology consumed by this sector is information technology. Think about that. Information technology that this room is involved with. 85% of their purchases are information technology and they consume, and it is accelerating. And the reason for that is IT, information technology, is no longer an adjunct to our services economy's strategy. It is central to the strategy, and sometimes it is the strategy. And we expect that this trend will continue to grow. How do we take advantage of this technological shift in our businesses, in our daily lives? Now, you heard Tom talk about the exponential growth. The reality is, information technology by nature is exponential. And as Tom mentioned, we as human beings, we're designed, we're wired to be linear thinkers. We cannot but think linearly. As entrepreneurs, obviously, we're challenged to make sure that we don't think linearly, but that's a concerted effort for us to think non-linearly. Thinking linearly, if you have to go 30 steps, you take 1, 2, 3, and at the 30th step, you are there. It's 30. Exponential growth means it goes like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. By the time you reach step 30, guess what you're at? Anybody? 1 billion. 30th step will get to 1 billion. See, technology is by nature exponential. And there are multiple examples. Tom gave you one, I'll give you another couple of examples. It grows exponentially. Now, a few of the examples are in Moore's Law, you've heard. All of us have heard that now. Arguably, it is slowing down, but for the last 50 years, it has proven to be true. In the early 70s, I believe it was, Intel introduced their first chip, 4004, I believe it was called. It was those of you who understands the manufacturing technology. They used 10,000 nanometer as the processing technology at that time, in the early 70s. Guess where that technology is today? Anybody? 10 nanometers. In my lifespan, in our lifespan, in the last 30 years, 30 to 40 years, we have gone multiple orders of magnitude in terms of improving our processes and technology. That's astronomical. That's very, very impressive. Today, Tom showed you, this, we can have the power and the storage in our pocket that would have required only 30 years ago a good part of this room full of equipment. Processing power and storage. Today, we can have that in our pocket. We don't think about it, but it's an amazing, amazing progression of technology. It's exponential growth. Look at wireless data that we consume every day. Only at the turn of century, in 2000, year 2000, state-of-the-art in wireless data was GPRS, Generalized Public Packet Radio Service. A whopping 10 kilobits a second in a downlink. What can you do with that? But that was only 10, 15 years ago. 10 to 15 kilobits was the state of the art. Today, with long-term evolution, LTE, and fourth and fifth generation technologies, we could do 50 to 100 megabits a second in a downlink in the same bandwidth. 15 years. multiple orders of magnitude increase in the bandwidth. It's incredible. We don't stop to think about it, but when you do, it is no less than amazing the amount of power, the exponential growth technology has actually provided to us. Now, how do we take advantage of that in our business and what we do day to day? Now, so before we do that, it is important to understand where we are in what we do today and take an honest look at what our industry and what our businesses look like today. So let me take you through a little roadmap, my taxonomy in terms of where we could be. And we have to be very truthful in terms of where we are today before we decide where we want to go with the transformation. So at one end of this roadmap is technology extenders, right? These are the ones that don't invent anything, do not produce anything, don't develop anything. They leverage, they salvage existing technology and sell it into niche markets. And their focus is on relentless cost control and asset optimization and process optimization, create additional cash flow, do the same thing over and over again. So the leadership skills that typically these companies have is based on finance, accounting, and process management. Very well needed skills. But the idea is to do cost control, do optimization of assets to generate the cash flow so you could do over and over again. Next step on that journey or on that spectrum is what I call the technology exploiters. Exploiters don't develop anything new as well, but they use commercial off-the-shelf technology that's available, and by partnering with others, acquiring other stacks in the solution, they build a best-of-breed stack. It's usually 50, 60, 70, at best 80% of the solution that the end customer needs, but they provide that, they integrate. And their focus is also in reducing the price and the cost of the products that they provide to generate additional cash flow so they can continue to do the same. The skill sets they require in the leadership are basically the same as the previous guys. On the other side of the spectrum are the technology followers. Now, these groups and these businesses do implement their new technology, but what they do is they use new technology, add a little bit of their own intellectual property, and customize it for a particular application and sell it to growing niche markets. They do more of that, generate new cash flow, develop some of their additional intellectual property, and continue to do more. But they don't provide the entire solution either. They depend on the ecosystem to help them put together a vertically integrated system and provide a solution to their customers. The leadership skills that they have are fundamentally different than the previous group here. They need technologists and scientists to help them choose the best technology in the industry and then develop their own and integrate the technology and provide it to their customers. So that's their differential. In addition, they obviously invest in the marketing and sales strategies, in addition to the skills that are actually required to run a business, finance, accounting, process management, and the like. The other end of the spectrum is technology leaders. These are the ones that actually develop new technology, emerging technology. They focus on innovation and actually focus on early adapters that will take them from this side of the chasm to the other. They're relentless innovators. And one of the biggest differentiators these companies have is that they have big R&D budgets. They invest a lot. They are parallel thinkers. The skill sets that they require are similar to the predecessors, but they focus a lot on investment. So these people, the way they think, these big companies, a traditional thinking would be that if you have to solve a problem, and there are 4 ways of solving that problem, some of them ask the question, which one is the best way to solve the problem? And they pick, arguably, in their opinion, what is that one path that will get them there. Technology leaders invest in all 4 of those potential answers, 4 paths. And that's how they maximize their chances of successes, because they invest in all of the ideas. You look at, I won't name any companies, but you look around. The companies that have been successful, they have parallel programs and they invest in all of them. So contrary to the thinking, do more with less, technology leaders think do more with more. They invest more. The R&D and the technology investment is what gets them to where they need to be. The folks on the left side of that spectrum, their focus is inward. How do I control my costs? How do I optimize assets? Now, I won't name names, but we all know a company or two on that side of the spectrum where technology goes to die. We've all known that. Right? Unless they transform and put processes in place and leadership in place to transform to the right side of the spectrum, they're dinosaurs. We all know the examples of that. The folks on the right side, they focus on innovation and think about not only what the customer needs are today, but what their tomorrow needs are going to be, and focus on that, and relentless focus and investment. We have to be truthful in terms of where I am on that spectrum before I can actually apply efforts to transform. Once I have determined where I am on the spectrum, then there are about 4 steps that I need to execute to actually get there. I have to have the vision and the strategy. That helps me determine what do I need to change in my organization, the structures, the infrastructure, the processes to transform, and then align it with an appropriate business model. I got to do that as a first step, and then have a leadership team that understand that transformation is not an end point. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And that constantly, we have to constantly reinvent to be technology leaders. You understand that. All of you are in that bucket. You're all technology leaders. But we have to understand that in order for us to actually get to that transformation, we have to have the right leadership in place. You've all heard that. You can take the best strategy and vision in the industry, and if you have a B leadership team, your execution is no more than mediocre and often less than that. The converse is true as well. You could have a mediocre business plan, mediocre vision, but if you apply A leadership to it, they will tweak it. They will relentlessly address it and change it so the end result is actually exponential growth. Leadership, very, very important. And leadership, A leadership understands that as human beings, we are linear thinkers. In order for us to actually inject that exponential growth into it, we have to exploit technology. We have to marry our human capital with technology to actually get the exponential growth. So technology strategy, very, very important. And lastly, as John mentioned earlier, some businesses can do it themselves. Most can't. You need a partner. You need an objective partner that understands your business, that understands the industry, that will give you the objective advice and help you through that transformation. Very, very important to have that partnership. Now, most companies get the vision and the strategy right, but the execution is the hard part. How do you execute? So that's where you need a partnership that can help you go through that transformation. Planned and executed well, this kind of transformation can actually transform the company and get you on a sustained, profitable growth for a very, very long time. Let me take just a quick step back and talk about IT-driven waves. I'm specifically going to focus on information technology. In the 60s and 70s, the decades that we are talking about, our processes were very people-focused. We had individual experts in ERP and order processing, computer-aided design, finance, HR, and then with the advent of mainframe and servers, a lot of that information actually got digitized into applications, so we became very, very efficient. We transformed the global supply chain through that. And then most recently, a lot of that knowledge that has been in the network has been transitioned to the endpoints, the devices that we have in our hands. So what has happened is, as Tom mentioned earlier, the network is no longer technology network, the servers and the storage and the devices. The network has these mobile devices has sucked us in as individuals as part of the entire network. And now, you've heard about this Internet of Things and tomatoes and the IoT thing. It has brought in the things into that conversation, and that has become part of the network as well. And it has really complicated the entire picture. On one hand, it has created all these productivity gains opportunities for us, but it has increased the challenges and for us as well. No conversations, and I think you can resonate with that. Very quickly, every conversation leads to, okay, what about security? What about privacy? What am I going to do with all this proliferation of the network, all this complexity in the network? How do I deal with privacy? How do I deal with security? Well, one of my pet peeves, and I'll give you an example here, is collaboration. It's very obvious that all this technological advancement that's created this complex network, collaboration is very, very important. One of the examples, we have examples in all of our fields, whether that's in education, in government, in corporate environments, or in healthcare. I'll give you an example from healthcare. This was a study that was recently published in New England Journal of Medicine. It caught my eye. The primary care physician took care of an elderly patient over 80 days period. There were 32 emails. There were 12 clinicians involved, including the primary care physician. 12 clinicians took care of a patient over a period of 80 days. 32 emails, 20 phone calls, all between primary care physician and the patient or the family, or an individual specialist. There were 11 office visits that patient made. There were 5 procedures performed on that individual. One very key element in that. During the 80-day period, now one of the specialists talked with the other specialist about the patient. Not one interaction occurred between a dermatologist and a cardiologist, and so on and so forth. All of the interactions were between primary care physician and an individual. Now, what's wrong with that picture? I think there is two elements. One is obviously familiarity. The physicians and others would talk to each other if they know, and they were co-located. But I think the other piece is a convenient, useful, and meaningful way for them to collaborate. I think this is where technology comes in, and technology can help. This is our challenge. Technology is there. We have to put it together in a meaningful way so we can bring the entire healthcare team together. In this case, the primary care physician played a quarterback. So whenever he saw that there was a wrong drug prescribed or duplicate test was subscribed, he intervened and corrected the situation. But this individual was a researcher clinician. So his patient panel was actually pretty small compared to a general practitioner, whose patient panel is almost an order of magnitude larger. Imagine in a primary care physician, if you don't have that kind of time, who is the quarterback? No one. This is an area where there's an opportunity for us to address it. And as I mentioned, there are numerous examples in all of the markets that we play in. The government, education, corporate environment, and we talked about healthcare. Now, we at PDS recognize that, and we've dedicated teams that are subject matter experts to work with you in all of these fields. Your challenges, your business models are very unique to you, and we recognize that. And so we have teams of subject matter experts that can work with you. And so when we say that we partner with you, we recognize that we need to align with you collectively, innovate with you, to create solutions for you and your markets. let me talk a little bit about it. I'd be remiss, my marketing guys would kill me if I didn't talk about PDS. So this is a quick PDS commercial. You know that this is the 30th year anniversary that we're performing now. We are very, very proud. How many companies can say that they, for 30 years, have not only survived, but thrived? And I tell you, the reason for that is we recognize, I hope you understood from this inspiring talk that John Miller gave. By the way, I always find it very, very hard to follow his act. I mean, but I tell you one thing. He is like that within PDS. That's the John we know. He has the resume that he could write his ticket into any company. And that, I can say that for all PDSers. But they're here because they believe they're on a mission. We are here because we're on a mission. And our mission is tied very much to your success, or we won't be here. And I'm very proud to be part of a team that has succeeded, not only prevailed, but thrived for the next 30 years. And I have eyes on the next 30 years. So what we're doing is we understand, we strive to understand how your business model and your business is changing, and we're responding to that. So whereas we are very cognizant of our history and our heritage, we're building on that heritage to develop new services, new offering, new products that actually address your evolving needs. There's no customer conversation where we sit down and where we get the feedback that, look, we understand what you're doing for us. Our needs are changing. How can you respond to that? How can you become more of a partner that helps us solve our problems as opposed to giving us products and services? We are going through that journey, and every day we're implementing services and products that will actually take us from products and services provider to a solution provider. So what we're doing is we're investing. We're not forgetting what our heritage is. Any strategy that does not take advantage of what we're good at is a very risky strategy. We're not going to do that. We're going to leverage from our assets, our relationship with you, both technology leaders as our customers and our suppliers, and build on that. So, one of the things, hopefully some of you will get to visit our new configuration center in Oconomowoc. Walk. We've expanded facility. We're investing in expertise, in processes and tools to make sure that it stays state-of-the-art. We're investing in all of our services, the patient portal, the staffing, the professional services, the managed services. We're creating new services. Security is a big, big issue. Unless we have a security offering to help you address your security needs, we don't have to be in the business. We're not in the business. So we're actively investing in creating a security practice that can work with you, help you understand what your vulnerabilities are, and help you with that. And finally, I'd say that we're investing. I talked about investment in R&D. We are investing in R&D in a big way. Last year, I mentioned to you, we hired a top-notch executive from Silicon Valley who's with us here today, who's helping us build a top-notch engineering team across the country. We are taking jobs where people are as opposed to requiring they move where the jobs are. We're very, very fortunate that we get a very good roster of candidates from not just only locally in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, Minnesota, but also on the East Coast and the West Coast. We have recently opened a small excellence center in California, in Silicon Valley, in the heart of Silicon Valley, where we hired people to build on what we already do. We have a great relationship with MIT and some of the institutions on the East Coast. We are actually hiring, both on a consulting and full-time basis, personnel from the East Coast to join our engineering team. So we're investing in augmented intelligence, in data science, in software development to build domain-specific applications and services that will serve all the three markets that we serve in. So we invest in a big way in R&D. Now, as you meet PDSers, our PDS employees sitting next to you, or in the hallways, I hope you will sense one thing in them. This is not a job for them. This is a mission, as John mentioned. These individuals personify the mission They could be anywhere, but they choose to be in PDS. I'm just so impressed in the last couple of years that I've been with the company. Often you run into people that have been with the company 20, 25 years, possibly even longer. Why is that? Because they sense that sense of mission. And our mission is to partner with you, be your technology and solutions provider to take you to new heights. I thank you very much. I think I've gone over a little bit over my time. What I'd like to do is to introduce our panel to you so we can actually dig deeper into this discussion about what is the role of technology in evolving business. And they represent all three sectors: government and education, the corporate environment, as well as healthcare. So let me very quickly move over and introduce our panelists to you. I'll introduce, now they have very, very impressive resumes and bios, so to do justice to them, allow me to read there, because I don't want to leave out any of their significant accomplishments. So I'll welcome them to sit with me here, and we'll have a discussion. So our first panel is Christine Besler. She's the Chief Information Officer and Vice President of Information Technology at Pro Healthcare. She has the responsibility over information systems, telecommunications, informatics, and project management. Now, she's taken Pro Health through meaningful use 1 and 2 for hospitals and physicians. She has attained stage 6 designation on the HIMSS Analytic EMR Adoption Model, NRAM, as well as achieved most wide recognition. And her resume goes on and on. Please help me welcome Christine. Our next panelist is Mike Grimm. Now, Mike serves in a corporate environment as in our vernacular. He serves as the Vice President of Information Technology for the Sub-Zero Group, where he's a member of the executive management overseeing all IT activities and functions. He's been at the Sub-Zero Group for past 7 years with his biggest priorities in the area of improving product time to market, product distribution optimization, marketing automation, and the connected appliances implementation. Prior to joining the Sub-Zero Group, he had overseen the IT function at Fiskars Corporation for 6 years. Please help me welcome Mike. Our next panelist is Kathy Lang, who's the Chief Information Officer at Marquette University. She's responsible for strategic direction of technology, IT project management, technology infrastructure, applications, IT security, research computing, and on and on. Prior to Marquette University, she was Chief Information Officer at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and IT Director at College of St. Benedict and St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. Please help me welcome Kathy. And last but not the least, we are really privileged to have Dr. Martha Gray from MIT. She has a multifaceted career in which she has built programs to drive biomedical technology innovation, conducted research to better understand and prevent osteoarthritis, led a preeminent academic unit, and served as the profession through work with organizations and institutions, trained in computer science and electrical and biomedical engineering, and serving as the MIT faculty for nearly 3 decades. She has held numerous leadership positions. For 13 years, she directed the Harvard-MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology, an academic unit with multiple research and training programs for a career in medicine, business, and research. I should also mention Dr. Gray has been my own personal mentor in the fellowship that I had an opportunity to participate last 3 years ago. We're privileged to have her join us. Please help me welcome Martha. So just to kick it off, I'd request the panel to take, in any sequence, take a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, and talk about, in your business, the role of evolving role of technology. What do you see as the opportunities? What do you see as the concerns? What will keep you awake at night? And then we can actually follow with some specific questions. So maybe we can start with Christine.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So how many in the room are in the business of healthcare? quite a few of you. So you're going to get what I'm about to say. But for the rest of you, just to kind of frame where we're at in healthcare, I think the challenge today is all about interoperability. So you think about what we need to be doing for our patient. How are we serving you best? And in this new world where people are much more mobile, and Tom and others have talked about expectations of our consumer and our patient, folks expect that their medical record is available no matter where they go, and that it is indeed held private, yet available to everyone that might need it. And again, Asif showed you the diagram of how complex someone's treatment may be, all the specialties, all the specialists. They may not even be in your system. They're talking to another system. So how do we talk to each other? And then how do you keep that secure? So you talk about the challenge of cybersecurity. Man, have we got a job ahead of us. So I know security is a long-standing issue, but I will tell you today the challenges are incredible. They say, I think the statistic is something like healthcare information is now worth 17 times more than your credit card information. So we are certainly a new target, and yet our patients have an expectation that their data is out there and available when needed, whenever. So again, that's going to kind of frame some of the things that I'll be talking about and how can technology help.
Thank you, Christine. Mike?
My name is Mike Grimm. I'm with Sub-Zero. How many of you are familiar with Sub-Zero products? Okay, great. We're a 7-year-old manufacturer based here in Wisconsin. I've been with them about 7 years, and it's just amazing the role technology has played in our organization. Every single thing we do, every strategic initiative is some way tied to technology. Technology is represented on every steering committee, every major project, and like I said, it's become part of our DNA. I could talk endlessly about different ways we're using it within the company, but I thought I'd highlight 4 that hopefully will lead to some questions. At the heart of our DNA is building beautiful, functional products. That means we need to have great engineers, we need to retain those engineers, and we need to give them the tools they need to keep them, but also do their jobs. And in that space, you know, our engineers are being snapped up by GE, all the other major manufacturers, and we have had to respond by giving them a technically rich environment, all the tools they need, horsepower they need to get their job done fast, and the types of things to retain them. Moving on, another area is traditionally our products have been sold by our typical consumer, which would be a 53-year-old stay-at-home mom with a college degree who would either sell our product through word of mouth at the country club or at a cocktail party. But that world has changed. It's now millenniums. It's a whole new environment where they're out doing online reviews, searching websites. They're coming up with their product selection way before they even engage with anyone. And we needed to react to that and put the right tools and processes in place there, and we've done a lot. The third is, and I know this in Asif's presentation was shown back in the 1990s, but optimizing our distribution channel, because we've been an old school distributor with 2-step distribution, meaning we've got middlemen. And we've worked hard to eliminate that because we need to be more responsive. So I could answer a lot of questions on that as well. But the most interesting to me is what we're doing in connected appliances, the Internet of Things. And our new consumer, like I said, is not a 53-year-old stay-at-home mom. It's a technically savvy, demanding consumer who wants a lot more out of their appliances. They want those appliances to be relevant, to be connected, to provide them real value with that connectivity, and to make a difference in their life. So we've had to do a lot there as well. So hopefully that gives you a little background.
Thank you, Mike. Kathy?
Hi, good morning. From an educational perspective, technology is pervasive, just like other industries, in everything we do, and it continues to change, and not just on the academic side, but every piece of that whole process. And of course, in higher ed, our customer changes every 4 years, and every 1 year we've got 25% is different. And so what is important today may not be the same tomorrow. And so we're always looking at how do we keep up? What do we need to do from an infrastructure perspective? How do we change to keep up with the user demands? You know, it used to be that we could dictate more of the technology. Now they're coming with everything. Devices don't matter. And we just need to make sure that we can connect every single one of those devices, wherever they are, to whatever they want to connect to. So the infrastructure is very, very important. Wireless is huge, the density issue. You know, it used to be students would bring their technology and leave it in the room. And even when they started bringing laptops, most of the time they left them in the room. Well, they don't do that anymore. They carry with them 100% of the time. So we have to make sure that the technology is available wherever they are and what they want to do. And we've got, like I said, the wireless. Also, with students living on campus, we're their ISP. So we have to make sure that different services are available. They may not be doing, you know, academic work as much as we want to hope that they're doing all sorts of studying at 2 in the morning. They're probably gaming with people across the world. So we need to make sure our infrastructure is continually changing to keep up with their adapting needs. You know, we talked about BYOD. And so from our perspective, we've been doing BYOD forever. The students have always brought their technology, and we've always been in that role. It's just becoming more and more as we go along.
Thank you. Martha?
So I live in the academic medical world, and so when I think about technology, not only its pervasiveness that everyone's talked about, it's the reality that technology has been at the core of every advance of medicine for centuries. So for those of you who may not be very familiar with medicine, I'm sure you've heard of imaging. So it's a great example, from the microscope to X-rays to CT to MRI. They've provided progressively increased ability to see things you couldn't see before. And the ability to see those things has led to literally leaps in our understanding of health and disease, and commensurately advanced and improved the outcomes, the medical outcomes that can be delivered. So as an academic and a researcher and educator, we think about how do we leverage existing, evolving, emerging technologies and to train students to do that so that they can advance human health, address unmet medical and healthcare needs. Over the past, and that's easier said than done, as many of you may realize, as you look at what academics produce. And so over the last decade or two, we've developed a variety of methodologies that for designing and executing research programs with the specific purpose of bringing these new technologies out to the real world so they can have a real impact on humans. And that's what my job is basically at home today at MIT. When you talk about the challenges and the many things that keep us awake at night, I think I'd echo some of what others have said, this issue of connectivity, the word that we heard from Tom. And it's not just, are you connected? It's, can you have a meaningful and sustained interaction across industries, across professions, across geographies? Because without those meaningful connections, and I truly mean including outside of the academy, without those meaningful connections, it's a huge barrier to getting new technology so that they have impact.
Absolutely. I have to tell you a very, very quick story, 30 seconds. I had the privilege of attending one of Martha's programs at MIT for several months, and every Monday we would actually sit down and have a collaboration between faculty and students at MIT in Boston, faculty and students in Madrid, and sometimes from other locations as well. Not once did the video collaboration system work for us. We always had to look for IT aces to come in and help us out. I'm sure you've had that experience too. At PDS, we have that experience. We have linked set up in all organizations. We always needed a PhD in IT to actually get that thing going. And so one day, we were in Madrid. We're sitting patiently waiting for an IT guy to fix the system. Martha turns back to me and she goes, you know, you're the IT guy. When are we going to fix this problem? So, you know, with that, let me just extend that question to Kathy. You know, with distant learning and MOOCs, and with this whole proliferation of BYOD that you mentioned, How are we addressing this collaboration issue in an academic environment?
It is often a challenge, but it's very important. We're doing a lot more with collaboration, bringing people in, as well as just collaborating with the student groups. Like student groups here at Marquette are working with student groups in other countries, in the UK, and they're actually doing joint projects together. And the technology often is an issue, but actually I'm surprised the students get it pretty quickly. I think it's some of the faculty that, you know, and some of us who have a greater problem with that. And it also depends if it's a one-on-one thing or a group to group. But that's what we're looking at all the time, and how do we bring that into all the classrooms as opposed to just a particular classroom? Because, you know, it used to be distance education. You'd have, like, the whole class would be distant, so you'd go somewhere and it'd be a professor coming in from somewhere else. Well, now that could be a component in one class. So we have to have, we're using that technology to bring it in. But support for that is a constant struggle.
It's a challenge to this team here. Martha, anything to add from your experience?
My experience is identical to what you're saying in terms of the use of technology to enable collaborations. And it is true that when somebody of my generation, which there are still generations, is in the room alone with the technology, we want the young people there. That helps. It's just as true.
Thank you. Well, let's turn to a topic of this thing called the Internet of Internet of Things. So this is a buzzword that has been thrown around. Mike, I'm going to address one of the questions to you, is that, you know, Internet of Things, often this term is used to describe just a monolith. Isn't it different depending on the context? Isn't the Internet of Things different in corporate environment than an education environment than healthcare?
Oh, absolutely.
And how are you addressing that in your environment?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, probably the most important thing for us to figure out is where the value was, because a lot of people say, why do I want my refrigerator talking to the internet? They just don't get it. So it's just not simply connecting like you could connect just about virtually anything. It's trying to figure out what will we do with that when it connects. In our case, there were some real world applications. For instance, when we have a failure, we can automatically connect to our service center, automatically have a call placed, automatically even determine what parts are failing, and automatically schedule an installer. So that's real value. You know, one of our competitors, I think, did our industry a huge disservice. They had a big ad campaign where they had huge LCDs on the front of a refrigerator. The husband was at the store shopping. He called his wife. She was burping the baby or something. So he clicked on some cameras to see what was in the refrigerator. Well, to us, that's not real value. That was kind of silly. And we took a lot of abuse. Our whole industry did over that. So yeah, I agree. It's for each application, there has to be specific value and specific reasons for providing that.
Thank you. Christine, a question in the healthcare arena. You are pioneering population health in your organization. How does technology play a role in taking care of your patients?
Yeah, so healthcare has come a long way. I think that you hear a lot about, you know, the old days where you could go to your doctor, you could have a procedure and some treatment, and you ended up paying regardless of the outcome. And the fact of the matter is, the new world is we're trying to move to value-based care. And that means that we really aren't going to get reimbursed unless we're proving that we are indeed improving your health, that indeed that procedure was needed, and indeed that your health has been improving. And so you talk about all the things you've already heard, connectivity, and how in fact are we going to continue to lower healthcare costs, but still do a better job of improving your health. Well, in order to do that, we've got to turn the corner on how engaged our patient is. And in fact, our consumers are a lot more engaged. They are a lot more savvy. They get it. They're out there researching which doctor to go to. They want immediate access. Sometimes they don't even want to leave the home. They want to be able to just video visit with their physician. How do we monitor how you're doing through wearables and other devices. So you talk about the Internet of Things, you talk about the challenge of connectivity, you talk about meeting the expectation of this new mobile savvy customer and patient. You know, I think that's the challenge. So we've got to stay really engaged with technology to enable that. How do we stay ahead of the onslaught of just what's the popular thing of the day versus what's really going to improve your health? And how do we be a lot more sensitive to what it's costing us? How can we make IT cost less? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to lower healthcare costs. So we've got to figure this all out, and there is no way we can do that without being a lot more collaborative with our IT organizations, and in fact, collaborative across IT organizations in the nation. So we've just got to really be talking to each other, and the days of having an IT shop that's a silo in their own organization, those days are gone. We've got to really be talking to each other and really innovating together.
It's great points. You know, one of the other things, Christina, I know you've been involved in this whole interoperability of a lot of the technologies that are at your disposal. Where would you say the state of that integration is, and what kind of advice would you give to these technology leaders there?
Well, you know, I think it's a big topic, first off, and it's a complex topic. I think that device integration and our ability to appropriately and privately monitor the health of those that want to be monitored in that way is a challenge. We're being held accountable to your health, but you've got to participate in that process. And so how can we work together to come up with a care plan that really leverages wearables and how we're talking to each other? How do we bridge the gap of having you have your own little patient portal that you can talk to your physician anytime you want to, anytime you have a question, so that we're starting to nip healthcare concerns in the bud faster? You know, so it's all about keeping you healthy rather than treating you when you're sick. That, you know, we got to get proactive about it. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's just a complex topic.
Thank you. Well, let me turn to two of the top academics that I hear. We understand, we all understand as technology providers and consumers that there are challenges ahead that this audience needs to address. Talk to us, Kathy and Martha, about how is, in today's environment, technology impacting learning environment? So either one of you could address that.
Well, I'll maybe start and just talk about the change in education as a whole and the way we educate people. You know, for centuries, you know, education was the professor sat up in front and lectured to the people, you know, the students sitting in chairs. We're really changing that today. It's becoming a much more active learning environment. In fact, there was a survey just released a couple of days ago that said 55% of faculty are now flipping the classroom. What that means is they're expecting the students to do, maybe listen to a mini lecture on a podcast or something like that before they come into class, so they're prepared to come into class. And when they're in class, they're doing project-based work. They're doing collaborative discussions. They're, you know, bringing in, you know, videos from other things and discussing it and making work. So that whole thing is changing, you know, and the classroom now has to be adaptable, because in one class they might be actually working on a project together. In another class they might be more demonstrating what they've done, and from class to class that classroom has to be flexible. The other thing is we're now able to bring in, with technology, we could bring in experts to any class from across the world. And, you know, and in addition, our education is now available, our coursework, our classes, and our research is now available to other people in the world with hybrid classes and online learning. They can come at, you know, to us, so we have to be able to have the technology to accommodate all of those, that different type of learning, different style of learning.
Martha, any comments?
I can add to that. So you've talked about the part of education, Kathy's talked about the education where you're delivering in a classroom context. And another piece of education is inspiring that next generation to be the drivers of the future and the future technologies. And so I share everything you said. And on the other side of, people know MIT, people love to build things, and I can't tell you how many apps and so forth that say, I've got the best new app or the best new widget, and it makes this thing better, and it makes it quantitative. But that's not the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is, where is the value? Why does it matter? And I think as we see the convergence in medicine towards value, like Christine was talking about, and you were even saying, Mike, that about where's the value of technology, in terms of bringing those issues into the classroom or the educational environment more generally, so we understand and people are designing and building and imagining the future in a way that adds value, not just more technologies. I think that's a huge issue.
Yeah, Martha, just extending that, you are pioneering, helping technologists, young technologists, you're inspiring them, you're helping them. How do you identify unmet needs, especially in healthcare, and then apply technology to create potential solutions that could actually create breakthrough in healthcare? Talk to us about, if you can, about some of the examples, programs that you have inspired in that program.
So you could get me, like I spend all afternoon explaining this
We have
if
time.
anybody's interested, but I can talk about the key philosophies, and there's some great examples of what's come out of it. But there's a phrase that some entrepreneuring classes use, is get out of the building. So one fundamental thing we try to do in our programs when people want to do a project is we say, don't just go start with what you think is right now, but go talk to people, go talk to stakeholders. It's really critical that you talk to people along the value chain and make them part of your process of deciding what to do and part of the team that helps you consider every step of the way in execution. And that is a radical departure from the way research normally happens in an academic environment. Normally, what happens is there's a professor, people like me, who decide what we're going to do, and we get money, and then we hire somebody to go do that. And there's a pretty narrow sphere, or operationally, that our students and faculty work in. And as a result, you often do things that they have limited value, and they actually never get beyond a publication. So all of our programs in one way or another are devoted to getting there. And to the point about the Internet of Things and so forth, when you separate, I have this technology I love or whatever, and you say, where is it going to add value? Part of what we've seen in the projects that have emerged really end up showing Internet of Things. For example, one project that came out of it is our team Scolio, Nothing is Done Alone, is the idea of having a wearable that can detect posture and corrections in posture that a physiotherapist does in things like scoliosis and other kinds of training. So this is fundamentally an Internet of Things, but for places where if you don't do the rehab regularly throughout the week, as opposed to just in the clinic, it can have profound benefits to the care. But it is a solution that fundamentally is the kind of thing you're talking about. And that's one of many examples that I think any of us could give of where medicine is actually leaving the hospitals and the brick and mortar buildings where we're used to, that's going to leverage all these kinds of ITs.
Thank you, Martha. We've got just a few minutes left before and if there are any questions from the audience, we can address that. But my guess is, John is very quickly going to start get out of here. The panel will be available over lunch to actually address your questions, so please feel free to do so. But one thing that I do want to take the opportunity while you're all here on the stage is our audience is technology leaders, but consists of both the technology providers as well as the consumers. Many of them are interested, I am, in our professional growth. What can we take away to our organization that we can help them educate and be pioneers and be the leaders that we want to be. So if we could go around the panel and say, what advice would you give to the audience? What professional, personal, and organizational advice you give to them as a consumer of technology?
So I'm practically jumping out of my chair because I think this is what I think is really, really important, and this is the advice I'd give you. Leave the building. If you're IT, partner with who you're serving. Know their business, be engaged, learn to interact, learn to have that, you're going to need to learn to not enjoy just the pure technology, but you're going to need to learn to enjoy the benefits that it's giving your consumer and whoever it is you're partnering with. So at Pro Healthcare, we've developed what we call the IT Business Partner Program, where we select one individual that's best suited to partner with someone, a leader, and we encourage that collaboration. They meet as frequently as the business would like to. Usually we encourage monthly at least. But what happens is you form that dialogue and you form that sort of accountability and connecting the dots for what you do in IT and what result it's doing, but it also encourages this incredible innovative spirit. You begin to really talk and get ahead of what the needs are and learn from each other, and I think that's the key to where technology needs to go, so that you really learn what the challenges are out there, and it's just a huge win-win. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Christine. Mike?
My advice is get involved in those discussions that are going to change the business, transform the business, move the dial. Everyone expects IT infrastructure to work. No one wants to have those discussions. Those are table stakes. They just expect that to work just like your video and audio conferencing should work. But instead, at Sub-Zero, the most interesting and game-changing conversations we have is how are we going to change our go-to-market strategy? How are we going to launch this connected appliance? What things are important there? IT's role in that was dealing with, obviously, infrastructure, but security. And we even got involved on the legal side of it for data protection. Those are two examples, but it spans pretty much every strategic initiative we have. So once again, find a way to get involved in those discussions. If you're uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone, but that's where you need to go.
I'm going to kind of agree with both of them and kind of add on to that. It really is, technology isn't just like for us. We don't do it just for us. It's really for the service of the institution and what are we doing. So it's really important to work with the other leaders and the other business units in the organization to make sure that we're meeting their needs and we're servicing their needs. We don't even call them technology projects anymore. They're university projects or they're, whatever business unit project, because we're doing it all for them and working collaboratively together and to understand those needs. And I think that's what's really important. That's what we should do as technologists.
So I live in a very different world, but I have to say I agree enthusiastically with everything you've said so far, and go further. So what you've heard each person say is talk. Get out of the building, talk to people, think about things in a sort of human-centered way. And I think I'm sure all of you talk to people, and I think one of the things I've learned, number one, is that you have to create a system and a process through which those conversations can happen that's regular. So you said monthly meetings, that kind of thing. The power of going across, and these discussions should be cross-generational. Mm-hmm. So cross-disciplinary, cross-generational, and in a very systematic way. And I'm telling you, from what I've seen, you will go from linear progression to that exponential progression in ways that you cannot imagine or predict or know. You just have to have faith.
Thank you so very much, Martha. I think we're at that point where we need to break for lunch, but I just want to thank the entire panel, Christine, Mike, Kathy, Martha. Thank you so very much for making time out of your busy schedule and sharing your insights and addressing our questions. So please help me give a warm round of applause to the panel. Thank you very much.